What's up in War Eagle War Report family? It's your guy Ike Jones, and we are back with another edition of the season preview. Man, we are talking about Auburn's season, and Cal is the second game on the season this year. And who better to talk about the Cal game than our very own resident, used to be former. I'm not gonna rub that in every time we talk.
Oh no, it's okay, man. I wake up and think about it every day. It was Locked On Pac-12. It's Locked On College Football. Life goes on. Adapt with the times. It's the money ball. Adapt or die. Adapt or die.
Our guy Spencer McLaughlin in here to talk about it a little bit. Let's just jump straight in and talk about Cal. Right, Auburn saw Cal last season in the trip across country to Cal, and now making the trip back east this time is the Cal Golden Bears. What is the main thing? We'll start with the offensive side that Auburn fans should know about the difference in what they will see this coming season from the Cal Golden Bears and what they saw last season, besides the fact that the guy who was playing quarterback for like the second half or three quarters of that game is now a wide receiver for Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, that's a notable change for a lot of Auburn fans, to be sure. That is just kind of the way college football works nowadays. But the guy that Cal has at quarterback, make no mistake about it, is incredibly capable. Now, it does call into question what was going on with the Cal coaching staff rather last year. Once Fernando Mendoza got the opportunity to play and he was the starter, he was better for prolonged periods of time than anything Sam Jackson or Ben Finley put together last year. And they were the two guys battling for that starting quarterback spot. But I was high on Cal last year because I thought they needed to make a change in offense coordinator. They did. They have another change. They promote from within after losing their OC down to Baylor, Jake Spavital. But I think that move can work out. That's a question to ask, to be sure. But Fernando Mendoza brought a stable level of production to the quarterback position, which is what Cal was looking for, and it's why they ended up making a bowl game last year and beating a UCLA team to end the year. I'll toot my own horn briefly and say I called that game before the season and the week before that game took place. It was because of what Mendoza brought to that position. He was just really solid. They ran a lot of RPO. He can execute that. He's not going to wow you. He's not an NFL guy. He's not going to be an all-conference guy. Even in the ACC, where the quarterback depth is, average at best, it's better than the Big Ten, but that's about it as far as power conferences go. Mendoza is really capable. What I wonder about is how he connects with his receivers. Who is the number one receiver on this Cal team? They only have a couple of guys that even caught passes for Cal last year. They brought in a couple of names that Auburn fans should be aware of, but that's what I wonder. Not what's the quarterback position, who's he throwing the ball to, and how well is that offensive line going to hold up?
Okay. I mean, listen, all valid questions. I mean, we can get into the wide receiver position in just a minute, but you talked about the difference in the offensive coordinator and how Mendoza was good in the RPO scheme. Are they retaining some of that RPO stuff under this new OC?
That's the expectation. It was a system that was a big change from what they were running in previous years, which was frankly holding a lot of pretty good Cal defenses, quite good Cal defenses back from being a bowl team or an above average team in the Pac-12 in the final few years of the conference. They were trying to be, kind of pro style. They were trying to be a team that, looked a little bit like Utah, and it just didn't fit. It didn't quite work. And Spavital came in, installed a new system. Mendoza ran it really well. You've got a dynamic running back in Jaden Ott, who might be the best overall back in the ACC, certainly one of them, along with Damian Martinez. There will be a number of other good ones as well. You have great running backs in that Florida State room. But I think that for the Bears, the weapons are there, and I don't see how they would go back, and I don't think that's the expectation. It'll be the same system that was working for them a season ago, and if their defense can actually rise to the occasion, Cal's win total in the ACC this year is 6.5. There's a decent chance they go over. I don't think winning this game at Auburn is part of that equation, but I think that at the end of the year, Auburn could look back and say, hey, remember that Cal game early in the year? Hey, they just went like 8-4. They just went over that was kind of like a nice, good, solid win against a respectable ACC team. I think that's what Cal is. I think they're a 6 to 8 win team this year.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned his name, Jaden Ott, there, right? Like, still going to be a pivotal point in this offense for sure, just because of how dynamic he is. What kind of things do you think that he's going to bring into this game? Like last year, he talked a little bit before the game about how he had confidence they could win, and Auburn fans took a little umbrage to that. Auburn players took a little umbrage to that. But do you think he comes into this game with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder based upon how last year went?
Well, if memory serves, he got injured in that Auburn
He did.
game, didn't
Yeah.
he? And that's got to add a little fuel to the fire, especially when you're on the sidelines and you watch your team lose a close game that was ugly, sloppy, and didn't feature a whole lot of offense from either side. When you're an impact offensive player, I'd be shocked whether he'd admit it publicly or not. I'd be shocked if that isn't sticking in his mind of, hey, I've got a chance now to play 4 quarters to make my imprint on this game and help us go pick up a win in SEC territory, which Justin Wilcox teams have done. Well, I shouldn't say teams. A Justin Wilcox team have done once before. Prior to the arrival of Lane Kiffin, they went down into Oxford and in a thrilling fashion that featured a goal line stand, beat Ole Miss. I think it was back in 2018 was the year before Kiffin arrived. And I think this Cal team has got the tools to make Auburn uncomfortable. I don't know that they have the tools to beat Auburn on their home turf. You know, I, of course, famously in the Auburn fan community, picked Cal to pull the upset last year, and that was seen as, to many ridiculous and absurd. And then the game happened, and suddenly, Auburn won. To their credit, they didn't play well. Cal didn't play well.
Yeah.
Auburn won. They were the better team. But I think a lot of Auburn fans probably looked at that and went, well, that's not how I thought that was going to play out.
Oh no, I don't. Listen, Coach Hugh Freeze after the game himself said that's not how he thought that game was going to play out.
No,
So
well, I don't think anybody saw it like that. I saw a lot of predictions going around like 31-20 Auburn, 28-17 Auburn. Nobody had the total under 25 points.
Right.
If you had the under in that game, good for you. But that was just such a weird, that was a Pac-12 After Dark special, folks. Let me tell you, I've watched that phenomenon my whole life. It is not a myth. It is 100% real. That's what it looks like. Yeah. That's just what Cal once won a game. True story here. Cal won a game back in 2019. Wilcox was the coach then too, up in Washington against what would be a regressing Washington team. The year before they'd won the Pac-12, but that year I think they ended up going 8-5. They went up to Washington, got stuck in a lightning delay, and finished the game at about 1:30 in the morning. But they walked away winners. That's Pac-12 After Dark. You don't have that factor here. You do have the Jordan Hare factor.
Most of the people in Auburn would have even still been awake at that time.
No. Oh, no. What would you be awake? You'd have to be a sicko. Even I would think you're a sicko. Like, I was awake for it because, well, that's just what I was doing on a Saturday night in 2019. But
1 o'clock's a little different than 3 o'clock.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. It might have even been later than that. I felt for the support staff, media members, and whatnot, because I've actually been a part of a similar game last year when Southern Utah went to Arizona State. We had a 2.5-hour lightning delay. Our flight touched back down in Cedar City, Utah, just after 5 in the morning. And I can't sleep on airplanes.
No, that's not a problem I have. I fall asleep immediately.
Yeah, so Sunday was tough. But anyway, we're getting a little sidetracked here.
Yeah.
Like Cal is solid. This is not a team. If Auburn shows up with their D+ game, Cal will get you. They have enough weapons for that. Pending what I see from the offensive line, which was a question mark and a problem last year at times, and the receiving core. If you check those boxes, this is a top half offense in the ACC. 100% with Jaden Ott at the helm. And you look at what Fernando Mendoza did over the second half of the season when he was a starter. He was really, really good. But for Jaden Ott, that guy, it's frankly surprising in the modern world of college football that he's still at Cal. I would bet my life savings that he has gotten life-altering amounts of money offered to him to leave Cal, but he stuck it out. He likes it there. He probably values a Berkeley education because it's one of the premier public institutions in the country. So I think that for the Bears, you got to be able to, number one, keep him on the field, but he's got to be a part of it because this is only a week 2 game. So you're not going to be fully entrenched with the new receivers. It's not going to be firing on all cylinders. You got to have Jaden Ott. He's the most reliable guy, and you need him to be a focal point. I think he gets involved in the ground game. I think they throw him the football as well. Don't be surprised if he returns a kick or two.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what he brings in this rematch this year. Because again, I think that there's some guys on that defense who still feel a way about what he said last year, and they're going to want to get kind of a little bit of a reprieve because they don't feel like their defense performed up to their maximum standard last
They
year.
allowed 10 points.
Yeah.
You allow 10 points
Yeah.
to I don't care which power conference team you're playing, unless it's Vanderbilt. Like, come on. I mean, 10 points.
They had opportunities, though, to score. There was a couple of missed field goals in that game. That defense feels like they could have pitched a shutout, and they should have. But we're in here talking to Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On College Football about Auburn versus Cal, week 2 of the season. Let's flip it over to the other side. We've already said, offense, Jaden Ott. Don't really know who the pass catchers are going to be yet. Fernando Mendoza is going to be the guy at quarterback right now for Cal. But let's talk about the defense, because that defense for Cal posed some problems for Auburn last year, and really was the reason, I think, forcing turnovers and crucial stops on third downs, that game didn't get ugly, right? Because Cal wasn't able to move the ball as effectively as they needed to. Who are going to be the guys that are going to step up? Because that Cal team lost quite a bit on the defensive side.
Yeah, they did, but they do have some notable names returning. So it starts with Xavier Carlton, transferred in from Utah this past year. That's probably the most singularly impactful player Cal's going to have on this defense. That's not for sure. That'd just be my guess. He's an experienced guy. The production has been there. The size, athletic profile, it's all there. Craig Woodson on the back end, redshirt senior, been with Cal his entire career. He has been a Justin Wilcox recruit, and Justin Wilcox's specialty has been coaching defensive backs. That's kind of, if you think about like a Mario Cristobal, for instance, he's an offensive guy. He's an offensive line sort of guy. Kalen DeBoer is an offensive guy. He's a quarterbacks sort of guy. Justin Wilcox is a defensive guy. He's a DB sort of guy. And Craig Woodson is someone who you plug and play, and that's a good football player. That can be an all-conference guy. I think both of those players are set to be impact players on this Cal defense. And I just wonder if they're going to get back to the old school Justin Wilcox defenses, or if they've kind of migrated like the Nick Saban Alabama teams to where, yeah, your defense is still capable, but it's an offensively driven team. That's where the focus is. That's where the recruiting has been. It's where a lot of your best playmakers are. There are playmakers on this Cal defense led by the two guys I mentioned. But Cal used to be under Justin Wilcox a team that you just needed to figure out the offense. Well, if you look at their season last year, they started to figure out the offense, but they couldn't really get stops. They were middle of the pack in the Pac-12, which had really 3 elite defenses in it: Oregon, Utah, and UCLA. Everybody else was like just okay. And Cal wasn't where they usually are. When they are at their best, when the scheme is firing, when you've got guys that are healthy, they're able to play at, a top half, top third of the conference defensive rate in metrics like points per game allowed, yards per game allowed, and they just haven't been that the last couple of years. So I don't know if it's back to the drawing board, or if they feel that, the injuries, which certainly had, impacted them over the last couple of years, were just the reasons the defense had faltered. But if that side of the ball takes a step forward with Mendoza at quarterback, you keep him healthy, I think this Cal team is a 7-8 win ball club this year, and they can really give Auburn fits. And one reason that, I'd especially expect this game to be close early is I think Peyton Thorne is fine.
I was going to ask this because you were very adamant last year that Peyton Thorne was not the answer at quarterback. And have you felt any differently about Peyton Thorne going into this time? Or is it just like, okay, he's all right, but that's not going to be the Achilles heel of this team this time?
I love what Auburn has done in the wide receiver room this offseason. Cam Coleman, Keandre Lambert-Smith. Those are impact dudes. You get him a running game, which I know Auburn expects to have. The offensive line should be pretty capable. Running back room, tons of talent. If you have more around him, like that Michigan State season, which was 3 years ago now, that was a team that was really led by Kenneth Walker, and Peyton Thorne was a complementary piece. I don't think Auburn gets to the highest level they'll ever be under Hugh Freeze this season. And I do think Peyton Thorne is the reason why, but that's okay. It doesn't need to be a, immediate jump like, oh, they have to go win 9, 10, 11 games. Like, no, that's not. You have to have the right timeline at several positions. And I think Auburn has done a great job of elevating its skill positions around Peyton Thorne, but he's still the starter because he's the best option that Auburn has at quarterback. Like, he's fine. That's all I can say. And by the way, a lot of people say, well, you just hate Peyton Thorne. You don't think he's any good. Like, no, a lot of teams would love to have fine at quarterback. Most teams are fine or okay. There's not a question about who the Auburn starter is going to be. There's not a question about how productive he can be. It's just he's not going to go and lead the conference in passing or have 400-yard games or contend for a Heisman Trophy. That doesn't mean he can't help you win football games. Right. So, yeah, I think Peyton Thorne.
And to be clear, they don't need him to do that in order for Auburn to win.
No. I absolutely not. I mean, that's part of the reason that I have been, relatively speaking, kind of bullish on Auburn going into this year, and why I think they can overachieve and win 8 games relative to their preseason win total of 7.5. I think that he's okay. I think it's kind of a wash at quarterback. Mendoza, I haven't seen as much as Peyton Thorne, but I've seen enough to know what he is. Like last year, Mendoza was a 63% completion guy, 14 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Needs to cut down on the picks, right? That number has to go down. But second year in the system, having more experience, I think he can do that. But you could easily paint me a world. This is the way I look at this quarterback matchup. You could easily paint me a picture of either guy outthrowing the other in this game. And it'll depend on factors that are not entirely themselves. Who gets on top first? How well can Cal run the football? How well does Auburn run the football? I think both these teams want to lean into their ground games. And if they're able to impose their will, I don't think either quarterback's going to throw the ball more than 25 times.
Yeah.
Because I think you've got really, really talented players at running back. And that's where you want that's where both coaches, I think at some level, want to be, because they recognize we have capable quarterbacks. Like Fernando Mendoza, solid. Peyton Thorne, he's fine. We just need you to make a couple throws here and there, pick up a 3rd and 6 every now and then, and we can go let everybody else win the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the recipe for Auburn, and has been the recipe for Auburn the last few seasons. Is just be decent at quarterback and you don't lose, right? Like, we're not going to go in and impose our will in the passing game. We just need to be okay and lean on this run game to be able to win the game, which I think Auburn actually did really well last year against Cal in the run game. If you go back and really just kind of dissect that game, the penalties and the turnovers hurt Auburn, but Auburn was running the football fairly effectively throughout that game.
Well, so that's one of the reasons that Cal's offense was held to 10 points in that game. When you look at the game by game numbers, there was a direct correlation between the games where Cal could run the football and games where they could score points. If you keep the running game in check, Cal's offense, especially with a lot of new receivers, they bring in Mikey Matthews from Utah. They've got Maven Anderson back. They've got some options. Tobias Merriweather could be a new name for Cal to work into the rotation this year. They've got options. I don't know if any are as good as Jeremiah Hunter, who transferred out to Washington. I think that's a noticeable loss, and they would certainly love to have J. Michael Sturdivant back, who's still at UCLA for his final year of college football. But if they can get enough out of there and stay balanced, this is a team that can score. They're not going to go and put up 35, 40 points or anything like that, but they can do enough. And their offense often goes as Jaden Ott goes, and I think that'll be the case in this game.
Okay. Well, I look forward to having a revisit of this conversation as we get into the week, because by that time, Cal will have played a football game. Auburn will have played a football game. We'll know a little bit about both of these teams at that point in time, or at least a little bit more than we know right now coming out of fall camp and having played a game. But I look forward to revisiting this conversation. Spencer, if the people don't know how they can keep up with all of the great things that you are doing over at Locked On College Football, tell them once more how they can do that.
Locked On College Football is keeping you up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth, which is so unbelievably close. I cannot wait, folks. Monday through Friday, all year round, YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. It'll probably even be more frequent than Monday through Friday once the season gets going because there will be so much to cover. But I always enjoy coming on and talking about my beloved California Golden Bears. Ike, it's been great to see you as always, and I'd be overjoyed to come back on once the game approaches.
Yes, indeed. Looking forward to it, man. But we are going to get out of here. You guys know what you need to do. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're the War Report on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TW Report on TikTok. We'll be back at you with some more great information about your Auburn Tigers. But until the next time, and as always, War Eagle.